Let's talk a little bit about stubborn fat, Why is it so stubborn? Why do you lose fat everywhere else before you start losing it there? For guys, it's lower back, lower stomach. For women, it's hips, thighs, arms, things like that. That's the stubborn areas, right? And I'm sure there's plenty of extra reasons beyond the ones that I'm going to go through, but I got two good ones for you. By the way, I was a former bodybuilder, coached bodybuilders, grew up in the fitness industry, and official supplement expert, I guess you'd call me. I'm Jared. First thing you'll notice with stubborn fat is that it's colder than the other areas that you're fat, right? So you can be fat like on your chest here and it's not cold, but if you touch your ass or you touch, your love handles or something, it's kind of cold. Bad blood flow means less body fat usage in those areas for energy sources. So yeah, you could probably warm those areas up, and increasing blood flow to those areas does help a little bit with stubborn fat and losing stubborn fat, but that's not the whole story. The real reason you can't lose fat in those areas is called alpha receptors that are inside the fat cells themselves. And the alpha receptors are these little assholes that block fat loss when they're activated, when they're turned on. Unfortunately, there's a lot of them in the stubborn fat areas, and you can go find out for yourself. When those alpha receptors are turned on, your body will just take fat from other places instead of taking it from those areas, right? It's just not as easy. So there's nothing that really targets those stubborn areas as much as we'd really like to have a magical cream or something like that you could just take, or a little needle you could inject into your body, a little bit of Ozempic for your love handles or something. But it just didn't work that way. But there is one cool ingredient called yohimbine hydrochloride or yohimbine hydrochloride. And yeah, it's got some uses for like a sexual aphrodisiac and like erectile dysfunction kind of problems. But that's not what we're talking about today. That's the bottle, by the way, yohimbine hydrochloride. That's my brand. But the cool thing about yohimbine is that it actually starts to turn off some of those alpha receptors that block fat loss. And when those alpha receptors are turned off, fat loss in that area gets a lot easier. Now, it doesn't get as easy as fat loss in like the areas where you lose fat first, but it gets easier. Which means when you're in a caloric deficit and you're already losing body fat, because it's not going to lose body fat for you, but it will make it easier in the stubborn areas, right? When you're a caloric deficit, your body will start taking fat from the stubborn areas just as easily as the other areas, which means you're going to see a much more even fat loss and a lot less problems with stubborn fat if you use something like a yohimbine pretty regularly. Now, the dose with yohimbine is tricky because too much can make you sick. Cold sweats, nausea, it feels like shit, to be honest. So pretty obvious you don't want to feel like shit, so you don't want to use too much, right? It's actually why I didn't put yohimbine and why most people don't put yohimbine in fat-burning products, because if you take too much, if you take the effective dose, you're going to feel like shit. So you got to work your way up over time. So the trick with yohimbine is to dose up slowly. Take one for a little bit, make sure you feel good. The next day, maybe increase it from 1 to 2 until you find the sweet spot. And according to studies, the sweet spot is right around 1 milligram per 10 pounds that you weigh. So if you're 200 pounds, it'd be 20 milligrams a day, which is a lot to start with. So you got to start low. You got to slowly go up based off of your own body and how you feel. But I've seen some tremendous results with yohimbine. I used it with all my clients, guys that couldn't lose weight around their waist very easily, but were losing it in other areas. We'd throw yohimbine in, and all of a sudden they would take half an inch off their waist, and they would notice a difference because their body stopped taking fat from other areas and started taking it from the stubborn areas just as much as other areas. Hope that helps.